Good afternoon, race fans, and welcome to the opening round of the High Caliber Community League's GT4 Challenge Series here live on TRTN. I am always Regan Clark, and it is my great honour to debut yet another new series. This time, we come to you from a rain-soaked Monza, Italy, at the genesis of modern motorsport in mainland Europe. Here, the world's third ever dedicated racing course after Brooklands and Indianapolis, the historic Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, regarded as a potential part of Europe's holy trinity up there with the likes of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps and the Nürburgring. Monza is Italy's pride and joy. A staggering 3.6 miles and 11 turns of FIA Grade 1 opened back in 1922, sandwiched in motorsports history between the opening of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps as a road course and the Circuit de la Sarthe thereafter in 1923. Monza in the current day bears striking resemblance to its original layout all the way back over 100 years ago. Minus, of course, its monstrously large speedway oval section. Monza ran the Italian Grand Prix with a religious level of commitment from the inception of Formula One in 1950. In the modern day, Monza hosts rounds for a myriad of motorsporting disciplines. Highlights include the aforementioned Formula One Italian Grand Prix, as well as GT World Challenge Europe, TCR World Tour, and one of the largest rallying events outside of WRC jurisdiction, the Monza Rally, which leverages parts of the new and historic track to push driver and car alike to the limit on a one-of-a-kind super special stage that draws attention from all over the world of rallying, from local heroes to the all-stars of the World Rally Championship. Today, however, it hosts the inaugural round of the HCCL GT4 Challenge, and riding off the trails of Season 2 in the HCCL Multi-Class Championship, we have fantastic insight into this grid of drivers, many of whom will be seen for the first time ever here on TRTN, though, having a look through the paddock in the last couple of days, we are not without a group of familiar faces. We watch at the moment with two Aston Martins on their way out through the Variante Rettifilo. That's Elias Svennington in the number 3, and the man on screen at the moment, who seems to be the potential star of today if we're heading into qualifying in about, looking at it here, 17 minutes time. Here in the number 683, Vito Salvatore Majorana. We'll be more onto the discussion of this one in particular, but let's try and get ourselves as acquainted with the grid as we can over the course of the next 17 minutes. Just to quickly bring up then what the schedule is to look like for today's event. We can see here a 20-minute free practice session, which we are currently in, a 20-minute qualifying session coming up, and an hour-long race. One mandatory pit stop with fuel and tyres included. And as for the weather, it is almost guaranteed for rain there. As a matter of fact, a 1% variability rate and 100% precipitation. So no chances here of a dry race on the bookings for round 1 of the championship. And oh, that does appear to be a bit of a problem. We'll be back in just a moment's time. That was certainly quite bizarre then, ladies and gents. Let's hope that that doesn't happen again. Of course, with the fragility of G-Portal servers, you can never be too careful about these things. We watch here with a very familiar sight, making their way out of the paddock once again as we now restart that 20-minute free practice session on our way to qualifying today. Here with the number 119 Chevrolet of Christian Lebay. Now, we mentioned as well we're riding on the tail of Season 2 of the HCCL Multi-Class Championship and getting a look into its GT4 category to give us some insight as to who's been running the rings on this circuit over the course of the last season here in HCCL. You don't really have to look much further than the man on screen at the moment. Christian Lebay took 4 consecutive wins to put himself ahead of Asahi Ota in the championship standings. The Japanese talent in the number 55 taking only 2 wins that season. Lebay on a 4-in-a-row streak then dominated Season 2 of the Multi-Class Championship and is looking for glory here in the GT4 Challenge. And it is no small feat as the grid seems ever more competitive to match the challenge, coming into what is effectively Season 3 of HCCL. And we do thoroughly look forward to seeing where things develop. Having a look at the calendar then as we restart free practice. We're here in Monza for round 1 of the championship. We'll be at the Nürburgring for the next round on September 6th. Brands Hatch on September 20th. Snetterton on September 27th. Zolder on October 11th. And Imola on October 18th. The Hungaroring for October 25th. and on November 8th, the season finale at the Red Bull Ring. Now, right now, we're only contracted for round 1 of the championship, and even if this is where we get off for now, it is still a pleasure to bring you this fantastic grid of GT4 talent, with names such as Lebay, Van Herle, having a look around the grid as well, Svenington, we already mentioned Van Herle, Minards, both Minards, as a matter of fact, Reese and Jordan Minards, Oliveiro, Robinson, Sutton, Majorana, the names go on here. We have drivers that can walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to console GT4. So it is going to be an exceptionally fun day for us here in the commentary box. We just see here one such name very familiar to the viewers at home on TRTN. Tyler Vermack makes another routine appearance in the 835, this time with Mercedes, sporting the colours of the Mamawa Racing team, which is heralded by the 119 Chevrolet of Christian Lebay. Having a look at those times already rolling in on the charts, you can see we're on the start of our flying laps. Lebay leading that charge. Right behind him is Flitzer Flop in the 979 McLaren. And all things considered, fingers crossed, no more disconnects. We can get onto the discussion more poignantly as to how things are going to pan out in the coming 20 minutes of qualifying after today's free practice session. To start us off is the talk of balance of performance. And if we're looking here from just the perspective of Flop with McLaren, it's only minus 4 kilos on the 570S. The more rule of extremes come from the Aston Martin and Mercedes paddocks there, minus 40 and plus 40 kilos on a real opposite end of one another in terms of that whole spectrum of balance performance ballast. Looking further around it, we can see Ginetta loses 22 kilos and Alpine loses 13. Maserati will lose 12 kilos and Chevrolet will lose 9. Into the positives, Porsche will gain 7 and BMW will gain 15. But really, that real talk of the day is the opposite poles of that spectrum there. Aston Martin and Mercedes, remarkably very similar vehicles from a technical standpoint, using actually the same engine, the Mercedes M178 4-litre bi-turbo V8 engine. They made an export model called the M177 and shipped it to Aston Martin and Gaydon, Warwickshire when they made the new gen Vantage. So they do share the same beating heart here, but one is going to be considerably heavier than the other. And if you're looking from the perspective of Aston Martin here, we can see Jorbe Van Herle on his way out of the Variante Ascari on his way to Parabolica. He's going to be having a lot more fun than, say, for example, the driver behind him here, MCR Guillaume, in the number 925 Mercedes. We watch around the grid here. We see Lebay to the line for the first time of free practice, a 201.492. So starting things off on a very, very solid high here for the 119. He's chased down championships on all quarters, GT4 and GT3 alike, over the myriad of series we've had the pleasure of covering here on TRTN. So he is not looking to back down on this one, no siree. So we see Flitzer Flop second fastest, Guillaume third fastest, Gennaro Oliveiro in one of the only Alpines in the championship. He'll be joined by Martin Matinee in the 411, that's down in 8th at the moment, as the only 2 Alpines for round 1 of the championship. And he finds himself currently 4th and provisionally last of the set times on the chart at the moment. Checking to the line, the number 3 is next to cross the line here. Elias Svenington with Aston Martin, second fastest as he crosses the line there. Bear in mind, about 14 minutes of free practice left to go. And just touching back on the subject of previous wins back in Season 2, of course, we brought up the more poignant story of Ota v Lebay in terms of the championship fight for Season 2's multi-class GT4 category and how those two took up the bulk of wins in that championship. But let's not forget the man in the middle here, Tom Wells, who was previously, and now this is going to come up as a bit of an irregularity on my notes, but up until about, I'd say about 15 minutes ago, was signed up to race, if I'm not mistaken, having a look here, for Maserati. So now he returns to the court of Ginetta, where in which he took his solitary race win from last season. So he is not abandoning his faith here for the courts of Maserati, and really, you can't blame him. For those of you unfamiliar with the Maserati MC, GT4, the Gran Turismo, it was introduced in 2016, developed by Maserati in Modena, Italy, not too far as a matter of fact from where we are today. It has a 4.7 litre V8, the second largest engine on the GT4 grid, making 430 horsepower, but more poignantly, because it came from the MC Trofeo series that ran from 2010 to 2015, it doesn't have a suitable ABS or traction control system, meaning in conditions like this, it would be functionally suicide to compete. So perhaps a choice better made then for Mr. Wells, who starts currently this session off on a bit of a late entry in the 818 Ginetta. Joining him there is Manuel Verzi and Asahi Ota We'll be touching more on their performance later on today into the discussion of qualifying. Right now, though, Lebay has lost the fastest time of free practice, and that's to Jorge van Herle. Rather unsurprisingly here with Aston Martin with a 40-kilo reduction coming into the opening round of the championship. It wasn't really much a shocker to anyone that they were going to be up towards the top of the timing charts right now. First, third, and sixth, courtesy of Jorge van Herle, Elias Svennington, and Vito Salvatore Majorana. We also see one of the other Astons out on track at the moment, just out through the Variante Rettifilo, number 23, Jordan Minards. We'll catch up with him towards the end of this flying lap. We just want to quickly catch on board here with Majorana, just on his exit of turn 11. Makes his way down to the line. So 1.2 seconds off the fastest time there. Just pushed down by Stephen Sutton, but jumps up to fourth right alongside his fellow Aston Martin of Elias Svennington for that second row. Now, if this is to give us any prediction as to what qualifying could look like, bear in mind we have the data to hand. It is going to be an exceptionally good fight for that leading pole position. We just see as well Matthew Copsey crosses the line with Porsche for the fourth fastest time, so relegates Majorana to the back of that top five. So things already getting a little bit competitive here, a little bit racy on their way to the end of free practice. Not wasting any time then, Matthew Copsey, to make a very serious statement in the court of Porsche. The only Porsche in this round of the championship so far, and he has a real point to prove. Sticking himself up there with the likes of McLaren, Aston Martin and Chevrolet at the front of this now 20 car pack. Quickly checking here, we can see this is Martin Matinee, the other of the two Alpines. We discussed the other Alpine, the number 12 of Genaro Oliveira, the Argentinian driver in 9th at the moment. Matinee will be joining him as well as the only two Alpines in this championship, and it's a real rule of extremes, and I think it's one of the best things about GT4 as a category is where you can see up in the front row Aston Martin and Chevrolet, you know, luxurious grand touring / sports car, and then hardcore American muscle, 4 litres and 6.2. Then you get the total opposite end of the spectrum here, a very small, very petite rallying heritage rear engine sports car with a 1.8 litre Renault Megane engine. If you could believe that or not, these two cars compete in the same category, and coming from the world of GT3, it is a real shock to the system to see for the first time in ages. Of course, we've been covering GT4 here in the last couple of months on TRTN across a few different series, but it is fantastic to see yet another new grid take to the helm. We've just seen there at the top of the timing charts, Lebay retakes the fastest time by 0.2 of a second to Jorge van Herle, putting Aston Martin second and third. Let's see what Matinee can do in the 411 Alpine from 13th, stays 13th there, so a time to forget for the 411. The number 97 next to the line, that would be Matthew Copsey, so he's still fighting his way back up into that top four. Can't find it on this last lap just gone in free practice. About a 100th there away from Elias Svennington's Aston Martin, which you can now see forms a 2, 3, and 4. He's at the back of it. In front of him is Vito Salvatore Majorana and Jorge van Herle. So next to the line, the number 55, another Aston Martin here, Asahi Ota. Took 2 race wins last season, so the Japanese talent isn't looking to slow down whatsoever. Will be one of the more likely drivers to challenge for that front row today alongside Van Herle and Lebay and Majorana. So Aston Martin looking incredibly capable in today's round. And I must say, what a fantastic livery. They're bearing the striking resemblance, as a matter of fact, to the F1 safety car. And the same Aston Martin racing green. That's almost down to a T there. Very, very well done by Asahi Ota. Perfect mimicry there of that fantastic, almost tealish dark green that Aston Martin's using nowadays. That is a real stunner. The number 41 is next to the line. We'll catch on board here. Anthony Villorio in one of the only McLarens in this championship so far. The only other being the 979 of Flitzer Flop, of which he overtakes, as a matter of fact, for 6th place in the timing charts before qualifying today. So for those of you just joining us now, we did have a minor technical outage at the start of today's session. So we did have to go to technical difficulties. I believe that could have been a forced server reset so that a few more drivers could get in. We're actually up to a staggering 20 drivers now for this opening round. In the wet in Monza, I don't really have high hopes that things are going to be so clean when we get down to Rettifilo for the first time. But never say never on that regard. For those of you just joining us, let's get a look back at the regulations before that technical outage. It remains the same. We're right now with about, looking at it here, about 8 minutes left to go in free practice of a 20-minute free practice session. And we have a 20-minute quali coming up and a 60-minute race. One mandatory pit stop with fuel and tyres included. And the weather is almost 100% chance of heavy rainfall today here in the Temple of Speed. So it is going to be an exceptionally tough day for a lot of these GT4s. And rare is it we get to see wet racing here at Monza. Every time we visited the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, it has been searingly hot and dry weather. So it is a real shock to the system then to see even a smidgen of rain hit that grade 1. Nonetheless, it will provide a very unique challenge here. The drivers have dreamt and dreaded that first corner, no matter the condition, no matter the car, no matter the day. The Variante Rettifilo is the career-killing corner of any race here at Monza. Throw wet racing into the mix, there could be blood. And as a matter of fact, there could be absolute destruction of this grid going down into turn 1. Every driver will be prioritizing survival. Everything else is just a reward for that first achievement. As we see here with Vilorio, now down to 7th as Manuel Verzi goes up to 6th fastest. We've seen Vilorio before as well. For those of you who have been watching the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, Vilorio took 2nd place in Alton Park, just gone. So that was a fantastic performance by him in the 2nd race of the day. So not looking to slow down at all, and I think that seems to be the modus operandi of the greater majority of this grid. A lot of drivers either coming off the back of the last HCCL season or actually coming off the back of wet racing this week in the case of Lebay and Vilorio, as was the case over in Alton Park on Tuesday night. So whilst we've got just a moment of time before qualifying, let's have a look all the way down through the grid so far. So starting things off at the leading time is Christian Lebay, an oh-so-familiar face here on TRTN. Won the Sunday League over in NLRL and also won the GT4 category here on HCCL. Has also taken championships in other leagues as well and is just seemingly this dominant face of GT4. One of the fastest drivers on console ACC in the GT4 category alone. Then looking further down the grid, Jorbe van Herle, who we've seen only a handful of times on our radar before. And he'll be joining us from the number 77 Aston Martin. We saw him a little earlier in today's session before the disconnect. Right now, 2nd fastest in the session so far. Then on the story of Aston Martin is one of the new faces today, and I'm sure you'll remember the name because he is looking to be exceptionally fast come qualifying in a few minutes' time. It's Vito Salvatore Majorana in the number 683 Aston Martin Vantage. Then joining him inside the top 5 after that last lap just gone, Asahi Ota from Japan, and the number 55 just set the 4th fastest time here before the end of free practice. We also see as well that Jorbe van Herle has gone fastest, so very well done to him there. That is the fastest time of free practice so far. We'll see where that ranks up come qualifying. Looking further down the field then, Elias Svennington here in the number 3 with Aston Martin, just having joined the K1 Esports team only a few weeks to actually a few months ago here. The Swedish talent looking to join us for the championship, looking on very solid form here alongside his fellow Aston Martins inside that top 5. 4 of 5 slots there taken up by the Vantage alone. Then over to the court of Porsches, we see a quick spin here onto the grass. Can he keep it out of the wall? So it seemed there. That was Matthew Copsey in the number 97. We saw him earlier on in today's session as well, and he'll be looking incredibly strong with Porsche today, despite less than beneficial balance of performance. Then looking further down the order for Mercedes AMG, we have Manuel Verzi in the number 6, and he's currently 7th fastest on his way to the line there. Only a few more minutes before the start of qualifying. About 4 minutes left to go, as a matter of fact. Looking further down the field is a driver we've already caught on board with today, and a driver that is still familiar to the viewers at home on TRTN, Anthony Vilorio in the number 41. The same colours we've seen over on the Competizione Performance League adorn the number 41 McLaren 570S in today's racing session. Tyler Vermack, an oh-so-familiar face, a man of a million faces then, so it seems. And he'll be joining us from the number 835 Mercedes AMGs, the only South African driver in this championship. Then marking the back of that top 10, a new face for us here on TRTN. It's Flitzer Flop in the number 979, hailing from Germany. He'll be joining us in a very, very bright green and almost fluorescent neon yellow McLaren 570S. Very striking colours indeed there by Flop. Then outside of the top 10 right now, back into the court of AMG. We can see this is MCR Guillaume, the number 925, hailing from France. He'll be competing there with Mercedes. Very striking colours indeed. You really got to respect the kind of effort these drivers put in for liveries, and that is a remarkably nice looking one indeed. You also see here, this is Stephen Sutton from the United States, number 7 with Mercedes, was briefly up in that top 6 earlier in this free practice session. Right now resides in 12th. Back to Aston Martin here as we see one of the 2 Minards in today's race. This is Jordan Minards in the number 23, adorned there with the Fanatec and the dark green checkerboard design there on his V8 Vantage. Looking further down the line now, this is, you have to forgive the inaccuracy on the graphics as it does show you'd be competing for Maserati, but it was a last-second change for Tom Wells to put himself in the Ginetta G55 he competed in last season. There was the suggestion that Wells was going to go to Maserati according to SimGrid, but he has since heel-turned on that decision. Right now he's 14th and is going to be struggling today as one of the slowest cars in a straight line. Very quick to get up to top gear in that G55, of course, like the Maserati, hailed from a world of single-make cup races with the Ginetta G55 Cup in the early 2010s. So it would definitely be against the ropes here in the Temple of Speed. Speaking of being against the ropes in the Temple of Speed, one of the 2 Alpines we discussed earlier on. This is Gennaro Olivero from Argentina, and the number 12, having a bit of trouble there out of turn 11. Severe lag, though, for the Argentine. He is really, really struggling for internet connection today. Nonetheless, he comprises one of 2 Alpines in this championship. The other, of course, being the 411 of Martin Matheny. Joins us there in the 411. We saw him earlier on in today's session. The solitary BMW of this championship so far, Cam Walker from the United States, the number 24, currently 16th fastest. Then to the last of our timing charts at the moment, we see here from Mercedes running a contrast in the colours there. Dark green with a white checkerboard design is the other of the 2 Minards, the 666 of Reese Minards, as he makes his way to the line there from 19th. Does not set a time on the chart, sadly, that time around. You also just see as well one of the other drivers having literally just set a time as we speak there, and that's Robinson. Sean Robinson from the United States, number 958 there in the is that yellow and black and green. Very striking colours indeed there on the 958. Then to mark the last of our drivers on this grid at the moment is Carlos Diaz, the number 32 Aston Martin, with another set of striking colours there, purple, yellow and white. You can't fault these drivers for the creativity they bring to the table with these striking new colour combinations. So as we're right to the end of free practice, but a moment away then from the start of a 20-minute qualifying session, it's Van Herle leading the timing charts with Aston Martin, LeBay second, Majorana third, and Ota in fourth. Then rounding out the top 5, Elias Svennington, just on his way out of the Curva Parabolica at turn 11. Then rounding out the top 10 for the free practice times by only 100th of a second between Svennington at the moment is Matthew Copsey in 6th place, Manuel Verzi in 7th, Anthony Valorio 8th, Tom Wells 9th, and Tyler Vermack in 10th. So that's the end of free practice. We're but a moment away then. The number 97 bringing it into the pit lane. That's Matthew Copsey at the end of today's free practice session. He'll be contempt there with a top 10, and he's only 100th away from a top 5. So a lot of potential going forward for Porsche. Now, they're against a rising tide here of Aston Martins, and with that beneficial balance of performance package to bring back up minus 40 kilos is unprecedented for Aston Martin. That's normally something bestowed to the older V12 Vantage up in GT3. So for the GT4 Vantage to be receiving such beneficial balance of performance is going to put it towards the top of the charts today. Make no mistake of that. It is already a fairly competitive bit of kit down in GT4. This is only going to exacerbate things in terms of single manufacturer dominance for the opening round of the championship. The only one able to stake a claim outside of Aston Martin in that top 5 alone is Christian LeBay, one of the fastest drivers of the Chevrolet Camaro this side of console ACC. So we are a moment away from the start of 20 minutes of qualifying today. We're waiting to see the times come through for the number 3, the number 411, the number 6, the number 12, and the number 979 amongst the paddock at the moment. So let's catch on board with the number 3. That'd be Elias Svennington just making his way out of Ascari. On his trails there, the 411 of Martin Matheny. Then the number 6 of Manuel Verzi, number 12 of Gennaro Olivero, and then the number 979 of Flitzer Flop.
So Monza is going to be... It always has been one of the closest qualifying shootouts we ever expect to see here on TRTN. It has not failed us yet. I do not think it will fail us today in regards to providing exceptionally close qualifying statistics here. So as we kick off 20 minutes of qualifying here for round 1 of the championship, let's see who's first out of the gates. We can already see movement there. That was from Stephen Sutton, but further up the order you can see the rising tide of cars exiting the pit lane at the moment. Among them, I believe leading that charge, yes, is Jorbe van Herle and MCR Guillaume. So let's get on board with these two. We try and catch them. As a matter of fact, the menu navigation in ACC's never been the strongest. But here is Jorbe van Herle to lead us out of the gates, then the first onto the track in exceptionally wet conditions here for round 1 qualifying. Out through the Variante Rettifilo we go. On his trails there, MCR Guillaume with Mercedes in the number 925, and behind him, Matthew Copsey in the number 97 Porsche 718 Cayman. So onto the discussion of qualifying predictions. Now this comes from Simbot data that we were able to take over the course of today. It puts Vito Salvatore Majorana on the leading time. Now take all of this with a grain of salt, as these conditions are not exactly one-to-one to what you're seeing today, but they are very, very close if any suggestion is to be given. And Majorana leading the times then with a 201.278. Christian Lebay off him by only 37 thousandths of a second. That makes one of the closest front rows we've ever seen in qualifying predictions here on TRTN. So we are in for an exceptional qualifying today. He's off by, of course, that 37 thousandths of a second for a 201.315. Asahi Ota predicted third with 201.482. Anthony Valorio predicted at 4 for 202.185. Flitzer Flop predicted at the top 5 with a 202.457. Jorbe van Herle predicted 6th with a 202.565. Elias Svennington predicted 7th with a 202.757. MCR Guillaume predicted at 8th with a 202.955. Manuel Verzi predicted 9th with a 203.363, and Tyler Vermaat predicted at 10th with a 204.107. If you look inside of that top 8, it is so incredibly razor thin there. 1.7 seconds, actually a little under 1.7 seconds, divide 8 positions in those qualifying predictions. So we're on board with Jorbe van Herle for the start of his flying lap here at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. So let's see what he can do as the leading time of today. So starting us off here on this monstrously long opening straight. In Formula 1, it would be one of the more dominant sections of DRS. In fact, one of the only sections of DRS in the F1 Italian Grand Prix. But for our drivers here, they're going to be relying on the good old-fashioned 8 to, well, anywhere between 4 to 8 cylinders on this grid today. So out through the Variante Rettifilo, the demiurge, the tread of all racing drivers is this section of the track. You can see it's already caught out MCR Guillaume, who's taken some barriers with him here as we stay on board with Jorbe van Herle around the Curva Grande here at turn 3. Down towards turns 4 and 5 then, the Variante della Roggia. And if you thought you were out of the woods with Rettifilo, Della Roggia is a quick and very exact reminder of the danger you've placed yourself in by racing here at Monza. Now down into Lesmos 1 and 2, turns 6 and 7, otherwise called the Curva de Lesmo. Just tiptoeing around the track limits as well for Jorbe van Herle. You can see it's very calm, it's very measured. He's not trying anything too ambitious here for the start of qualifying. A nice, simple, solid time will do wonders. Down the Curva del Seraglio then. On our way to the Variante Ascari, a very tumultuous section of the track, no matter the discipline here. It can be very, very easy to throw one's balance off at this section of the track. Coming down into turns 8, 9 and 10, we can see tiptoeing on the inside of those curbs there. Aston Martin actually hooking in perfectly at that second part there at turn 9. Out through turn 10, rocketing his way down towards the Curva Parabolica at turn 11. Another of our 2 straights here on the track. Bringing us down to turn 11. Straight line speed is the modus operandi of Monza, but it is not without great difficulty in those corners. So the drivers normally would be under the anticipation to go with the lowest available aero setups. We found that historically this is not always the case, but it definitely does help. So for Jorbe van Herle, the first of our times on the chart today then, and puts in a 2 minutes, 0.855. So that is incredibly fast to kick things off. We did say it looked incredibly measured out of Van Herle. Could this be an indication of further times yonder the horizon? We see that Matthew Copsey's gone second fastest. Now Vito Salvatore Majorana fourth fastest. Was briefly third. Lebay now second fastest. The time's flowing in thick and fast. Svennington fifth, now sixth as Verzi goes to fifth. Behind him, Jordan Minard. And we see as well, just starting another flying lap, MCR Guillaume, who invalidated over this section of the track out of the Variante Retafilo. Number 24 next to the line. That would be Cam Walker to start their flying lap in the solitary BMW of this championship. The 411 next to the line as we speak. We just seen there Martin Matinee, 8th fastest with Alpine as he crosses the line there for the first of his flying laps. So we're about 5 minutes into this session already. You can see now joining the charts was Asahi Ota in the number 55. Then Tom Wells. Now, I'm astounded by that opening lap by Wells, considering the fact that this would have still been towards the front of the predicted grid in a Ginetta. So am I going to have to eat humble pie here on the accusations that Ginetta wouldn't be able to cut it in a straight line? Perhaps so. Next to the line at the moment, let's catch on board with Reese Menards. The 666 out through turn 11 next to the checkered line here with 14 minutes to spare. See here what either of the two Menards are capable of in today's round. We see Reese Menards on a lap to forget 4.2 seconds off the beat there. Let's catch on board with the number 97 next to the line here if we can find them. Being a little bit blind here, Matthew Copsey. Now we found him on the exit of turn 11. He's in the top 5 with Porsche, only just outside of a second of pole position. Crosses the line, doesn't find an improvement for position. The number 925 of MCR Guillaume goes 9th fastest on that last lap just gone. The number 683 of Vito Salvatore Majorana from 7th place jumps to 5th there, up ahead of Copsey and now Tyler Vermack. Number 23 next to the line as we speak. And that was Jordan Minards. We also see a massive improvement out of Manuel Verzi, up to 4th with Mercedes. The number 41 of Anthony Villorio next to the line. And we see there he jumps to 7th place. We could barely keep up with the drivers today. Number 24 next to the line as we speak. That is going to be Cam Walker with BMW. And they go 12th fastest on that last lap just gone. The number 958 on its way to the line as we speak. That being Sean Robinson. Sadly does not set a time. Checking on board here with the next driver to the line, Christian Lebay, gunning for pole position here. He needs to make just under 0.4 of a second here to Jorbe van Herle's time. That is an exceptionally fast qualifying opening, I should say, for Jorbe van Herle. We were all expecting times in and around the low 201s. I am astounded to see the emergence of a 2 minutes creep up on this grid. Number 3 next to the line, Elias Svennington for Aston Martin in 12th at the moment. Crosses the line, no improvement of position for the time being. So next on board, the 666 of Reese Menards. On his way around turn 11, you can see great hesitation in the court of Mercedes at the moment. And really, could you blame them given such foul conditions against them in balance of performance? 40 kilos added to that Mercedes, where the Aston Martins up in 1st and 3rd of Van Herle and Ota have 40 kilos taken away. So across the line goes Reese Menard, sadly not to an improvement on that last lap. The number 77 of Jorbe van Herle does, I think, extend the margin ever so slightly. Actually, no, it's still a 390,000th of a second gap there. So my mistake. We see here with Tom Wells preparing for another flying lap with the 818 Ginetta. Right behind him is Vito Salvatore Majorana, who was predicted at pole position today. The Italian finds himself here on home soil in 7th. And as he crosses the line with no improvement of position, it is looking to be a little bit bitter from Aston Martin's Vito Salvatore Majorana as we hit the halfway here on qualifying. Anthony Villorio rocketing to the line. Can he take the position off of Majorana? As he crosses the line, sadly, no improvement. Needed to find 600ths to do so. Number 7 of Stephen Sutton just crossed the line there, remains in 13th position. The number 958 next to the line as we speak, Sean Robinson with Mercedes all the way down to the line. What time does he set then from 19th position? Sadly, no valid time set there by Robinson. So a very bizarre turn of events. Next to the line comes Christian Lebay again. The margin remains all to the same here. 390 thousandths of a second. That's 3 tenths and 900ths. On his way to the line. Does not find an improvement on this lap, but it seemed to me, at least from the body language out of turn 11, that he was charging up for this lap So we will catch up with him later down the line. The number 3 next across the line, Svennington, goes to second fastest. So we caught him right at the trailing end of that last lap just gone. Now sandwiches himself in between Van Herle and Lebay as a new competitor for pole position. Pulls it to one side there to let the Mercedes roll on by. That, I believe, is Tyler Vermack. Yes, it is, the 835 with Mercedes. See a whole swarm of drivers making their way down towards the start-finish line, among them the 411 of Martin Matinee. So let's see if we can catch on board. You can see up ahead, 2 Aston Martins getting into it with one another here, I believe. Yes, that is Jorge Van Herle and Jordan Menards, if I'm not mistaken there by the design of that Aston Martin. So there goes Van Herle. He knows that he's got to increase the margin now because it is starting to close down on him as the track gets a little bit more tolerable for the drivers today. Bear in mind, still 9.5 minutes left to go before the end of qualifying, and it is looking exceptionally strong for Aston Martin. No complaints out of this commentary box. Big Aston Martin fan here, so this is an incredible sight to see Aston on such great form. Number 7 next to the line at the moment. That is Stephen Sutton from 13th. Sadly doesn't improve position past Guillaume or Vermack. His fellow Mercedes straggling at the back of the top, just outside actually of the top 10. Number 958 next across the line. That was Sean Robinson. No improvement either. So Mercedes, you can see, are really feeling the pronounced effects of today's balance of performance. That has been detrimental to their performance for the opening round of the championship. Fastest among the Mercs at the moment and really gritting his teeth and bearing with it is Manuel Verzi in the number 6. Striking colours as well, just to remind you there on that Mercedes. Very fancy looking there. The chrome and green is a real standout on this grid. You see that Lebay does improve, but not enough for position as he puts himself now within a tantalizingly close 702 thousandths of a second to pole position, still held at this time after 12 minutes of qualifying by Jorge Van Herle with Aston Martin. Number 3 next across the line. That was Elias Svennington. Sadly, no improvement this time around from the Swede in the number 3 Aston. You do see as well another Aston Martin on its way to the line here, Asahi Ota. If we catch him across the line, let's see what the Japanese driver can do. In the number 55, one of the best looking liveries on this grid in my opinion, gets across the line, but needed 2 attempts for an improvement up past Svennington. Doesn't find it on this lap just gone. Number 818 is next to the line as we speak, but one on appears to be an invalidated lap. That's Tom Wells with Ginetta. And I must say, that is a real diamond in the rough here. I was not expecting Ginetta, with their known issues with straight line speed up against their fellow European contemporaries, to be up so high on this grid. Sandwiched right now in between Flop and Majorana. Number 7 next to the line then. We'll see Stephen Sutton across the line with Mercedes. From 13th, remains 13th. So plateauing here from a lot of the Mercs. 666 next to the line. That's another one of the Mercedes cars here. Reese Minards on his way to the line. And then behind him, the number 683. So that is Vito Salvatore Majorana. Minards remains in 19th. We see here with Majorana on his way to the checkered line. From 8th, remains 8th. So something is a little bit peculiar in the court of Vito Salvatore Majorana. Has the lightning he had in the bottle there not been recaptured for qualifying in today's event, as he was looking to be predicted at the fastest time of today? Now he finds himself floundering around at the back of the top 10. So maybe it's a case where he's channeling a lot more of that energy for the race, knowing that he's going to be in one of the more dangerous spots if he gets closer to the front of the pack, and he stands to lose even more than the front runners if he does go any higher up in today's qualifying standings. Maybe this is a bit of a tactical play, or maybe there is something awry with the Aston Martin. Frankly, we may never find out the real answer. Number 77 is next to the line. Jorge Van Herle looking for an extension of his time. Can he find it on this lap just gone? The Belgian has been on fire today. And he does, by only a few hundredths, give or take there, but he has found an improvement. So if you thought that was 100% of Jorge Van Herle's capability, think again, because we've just seen up past 105 there for Van Herle. 2 minutes, 0.832 by the Aston Martin, number 77. And the trailing 5 minutes of today's qualifying. Can anyone then stand in the way of Aston Martin's indomitable strides to pole position today in the court of Jorge Van Herle? Well, the closest possible chance we have here comes from Chevrolet's Christian Lebay, a real veteran now of GT4, has seen plenty, won plenty, and lost plenty. He's walked the walk and he can talk the talk. But can the 119 find any more strength here to push nearly a tenth of a second up to pole position? The goal may be just a little too far out of reach given the conditions at play. The Chevy has clearly struggled for some of the other drivers in the practice sessions leading up to today, but it has not struggled for Lebay. He has been icy cold, incredibly measured with his performance of that car. And bear in mind, it's the only Chevrolet on today's grid, even though multiple signed up. As a matter of fact, looking through that sign-up data, Lebay was set to be one of 8 drivers to have signed up with Chevrolet, and he's yet the only one to have shown up to round 1 of the championship. So with 4 minutes left to go, and time flies when you're having fun. 4 minutes left to go then in qualifying. Jorge Van Herle leads the timing charts. Christian Lebay in second by under a tenth of a second. Elias Svennington third. And Asahi Ota in fourth. Manuel Verzi to the top 5 now, up ahead of Flitzer Flop and Tom Wells in 7th position. Vito Salvatore Majorana in 8th. And Anthony Valorio in 9th. Rounding out the top 10, Matthew Copsey. Then outside of the top 10, Tyler Vermack, MCR Guillaume, and Stephen Sutton to make a trifecta of Mercedes cars there. Cam Walker with BMW in 14th. Jordan Minards with Aston Martin in 15th. Sean Robinson 16th. Martin Matinee in 17th. Gennaro Oliveira with Alpine makes 17th and 18th. Gennaro himself in 18th position. Not a great day for Renault Alpine. They're only 3 thousandths from one another, mind you. And then towards the back of the field, Reese Menard and Carlos Diaz. We can see Diaz is now out on track, so he could yet set a time here to disprove the suspicions he'll be at the back of the field for today's race. We see here with Lebay starting yet another flying lap. Couldn't find the improvement for position on the last lap just gone. And with time ticking down here, he's not got a lot of opportunities left to usurp the time of Jorge Van Herle. And speaking of, Van Herle is to the line. Does he find yet another improvement as he crosses the line? No, not this time around. So, maybe got a little too ahead of ourselves there on the expectations that he could maybe force this one out past a tenth of a second. But don't count it out because there's still about 1, maybe just about 2 more laps left in the tank here for both of these drivers to have a proper solid qualifying duel. Number 683 to the line then. Here comes Majorana from 8th position. Sadly, again, does not find improvement over Wells, Flop, or Verzi for a top 5. So his expectations of a predicted pole position could have just fallen asunder. Majorana will have to take the cards that he's been dealt here and play them. He'll be stuck towards the back of that top 10, but this can play into his hands. I want to point this out. We've seen the discussion before, and we've had the discussion before on TRTN every time we've come to you from the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza about the danger zone, and that I would always say stands from about 6th down to 16th on a 20-car field, and that is where you could see the bulk of your turn 1 and turn, in this case, turn 1 and 2 and turns 4 and 5. So Rettifilo and Della Rosa incidents occur from, because it's where the faster cars up front distance themselves, and it's where the cars out back gain ground. So it ends up creating this massive crunch zone. And down into turn 1 especially, you've got the leading cars slowing down in front of you. You've got the trailing cars trying to go later on the brakes behind you. It almost always results in an incident. Very, very rarely have we been able to report an all-clear green flag condition on the exit of Variante Rettifilo. And I don't believe, and now this is no discredit to the drivers today, but I don't believe we'll be in a case to say the same. With wet conditions, GT4's less than ideal braking for a lot of these cars here compared to the big boys in GT3 we're so used to covering here from Monza. This could get dicey. Now, I'm not saying these drivers don't know what they're doing, but I am saying that the odds are stacked insurmountably against them for there to be a clean start to today's race. And I don't believe what I'm seeing, but an improvement has been found by Van Herle. And not only was it over a tenth, it is damn near half a second to the next car down. If Jorge Van Herle wasn't adamant that pole position was rightfully his, look no further than the evidence before you. Can anyone stand in the way of a time like that? I don't know. And frankly, I don't think so. Only a few more glimmering hopes here for anyone to take pole position off of Van Herle. Moreover, to take the front-running positions off of Van Herle and Lebay. The two likely candidates of that right now appear to be Svennington and Ota, but we could still see a time of improvement out of Majorana, who was predicted himself at pole position at a time not too dissimilar to the one you're seeing on your screens at the moment. Number 979 next to the line there. We're at the end of qualifying, so these are the last times we see today. You can see here, that is Elias Svennington bringing it to one side. Overtaking him on track would be Carlos Diaz with Aston Martin. Number 97 will be next to the line. Let's see if we can quickly catch on board with Matthew Copsey. Just at the back of that top 10. Can he find his way up to 9th? Sadly, not this time around. He'll start in 10th. Here comes Asahi Ota into the pit lane, though. So no one in that top 5 besides Manuel Verzi can stand in the way of pole position. Do we see a glimmer of hope from Mercedes? They are so down and out with that balance of performance, but Manuel Verzi has clawed tooth and nail for a top 5 start today. Can he elevate that? He needs to find in and around, I think looking at it here, a 10th and a 100th. If he means to overtake Asahi Ota, he needs to find nearly a whole second for pole position. Never say never. Let's see what Verzi can do then on his way to the line. Will it be a sign of surrender? Will he be going into the pits, or will he be taking this one all the way to the line? It will be the former, sadly. So the number 32 that we caught on with earlier, Carlos Diaz, is on his way to the line to set his only time of the session with Aston Martin. What can Diaz do on his way to the line? From 20th comes the 32 on his way. And sadly, only 17th position at the end of qualifying. The 835 of Tyler Vermaak is on his way here with the Mercedes team on his way to the line. Currently in 11th. Can the South African make his way to the top 10? Needs 0.3 of a second. So he's going to give it absolutely everything to the line. What can Vermaak do? Sadly, not enough for the top 10, but very close there. You can see a 10th and 300ths would have separated him from a top 10 there, but set by Matthew Copsey, and he himself 1.352 seconds away from pole position. So a full grid rundown will be on the way shortly. The bottom line, Jorge Van Herle on pole position for Aston Martin. What a qualifying session indeed. We've had the pleasure of seeing. For Jorge Van Herle, the world's weight will be on his shoulders for this opening round of the championship. He's already taken pole position, and he's proven that he can do so by quite a hefty way to such industry heavy hitters as Lebay and Svennington, and Ota for that matter, local heroes here in HCCL. That is an exceptionally fast time by Jorge Van Herle. Less than ideal day then for Mercedes, their only car inside the top 10. Manuel Verzi in the number 6 is himself nearly a second off from the fastest time of today's qualifying session. The rest of them outside of the top 10. That includes Vermaak, Guillaume, Robinson, Sutton and Reese Minards. Also a very bad day for BMW and Alpine, their only cars in this championship of Cam Walker. And then for Alpine of Martin Matinee and Genaro Oliveira, all outside of the top 10. Very nearly, for the case of BMW, outside of the top 15. So we wait here for the grid to form up. We do have one article of news today. Now, for those of you who have only just tuned in to TITM for the first time, we do like to run a dedicated news segment, and we have seen the latest bit of news to come in is from the World Endurance Championship. BMW release an update to their M Hybrid V8 LMDH. Now, the most striking part among several new features for the M Hybrid, sorry, not V Hybrid, that's Cadillac, the M Hybrid V8 LMDH is that new nose cone, smaller kidney grills, and now this has been quite a crowd splitter amongst the BMW community. Some argue that it has ruined the look of the car, some argue that it has improved it. Personally, I think it looks a lot like the older V12 LMR from the LMP 900 days. So I frankly do welcome this new update, and it's all in line to keep that M hybrid V8 as competitive as possible. We could realistically then expect, if this is the status quo at the moment, we could expect to see fellow LMDH cars add upgrade packages very, very soon. So expect to hear news out of the likes of, for example, Cadillac, Porsche, Acura, and Aston Martin, even perhaps as well, as they do technically comply to LMDH regulations. So that's the end of our news segment. Only one article of news today as we get onto the discussion of the grid, with about a minute here before we go away into our formation lap. Jorge van Herle on pole position for round one of the championship. Marks an Aston Martin almost front row, but it is an Aston Martin all second row. More on that in a second. Christian Lebay then lines up in second position. Elias Svennington and Asahi Ota make an all Aston Martin second row. In fifth place, Manuel Verzi and Tom Wells, the diamond in the rough here with Ginetta, makes sixth fastest there. I believe there could be, yes, if you see there between the 683, so Majorana and Ota, is a gap there. Did someone disconnect? I believe so, yes, actually, as a matter of fact, that someone did disconnect. And that, I'm trying to think here, was... Because there was, 4 of the 5 positions were... 30 seconds. Oh, never mind. All right, well, not any time to get on with that. So, Manuel Verzi in the top 5, Tom Wells in 6th, Vito Salvatore Majorana in 7th, Anthony Valorio in 8th, Matthew Copsey in 9th, Tyler Vermack in 10th position, MCR Guillaume in 11th, Sean Robinson in 12th, Stephen Sutton in 13th, and Cam Walker in 14th. So, yes, someone has disconnected because Walker was originally in 15th. Jordan Minards in 15th, Carlos Diaz in 16th, Martin Matinee in 17th, Gennaro Oliveira in 18th, Reese Minards in 19th, and Flitzer Flop at the back of the grid in 20th position. Let's get on board then with the leading car to take us away here on the formation lap, and that is Jorge van Herle. We can see that a few cars have already been forced into the pit lane, among them there Jordan Minards in the 23 Aston Martin. So taking us away here, we have an hour-long race on the charts to bring back up those regulations from earlier on. That is not the... That's not what we were supposed to bring up there. That was our sponsor, which is not for this race. So to bring up the regulations for this round, it is a 60-minute race. 1 mandatory pit stop with fuel and tyres included. And of course, getting a look at that rain, there is absolutely no relent in sight here for the rain at play. It'll be 60 minutes of hard rain here. So for Van Herle, the world's weight's on his shoulders. We mentioned this at the end of qualifying, but he has got an entire crowd of cars here looking to eat him alive on his way down to the Variante Rettifilo. For Lebay, he's looking to have a very confident start here. We know how capable Chevrolet is when the lights go green and we go racing. We know just how much oomph that 6.2 litre LT1 V8 has over the 4 litres from Aston Martin, that it clips him on all sides here of this grid. Looking further down that field as well, there's going to be a very interesting topic of discussion there between the likes of Wells, Majorana and Copsey. It's Ginetta, Aston Martin and Porsche all in that quarter of the top 10. For Majorana, it has really been a bit of a lamented qualifying. He was expected on pole position. You can see the physical gap here between himself and the lead of this race. Does he have a trick up his sleeve then that we aren't seeing? It's definitely not been the best of starts to the championship for him, but bear in mind 60 minutes of racing could definitely spell a different story. We could see here from the pit lane is Jordan Minards. We get back on with our grid here. Elias Svennington makes an all Aston Martin second row alongside the number 55 of Asahi Ota. Those two will be vying for supremacy of the last of those top 3 positions heading down into turn 1. I do imagine a bit of heated competition between the two Astons there, a bit of a reaction-based drag race down towards turn 1. The Chevrolet could absolutely get away from these 3 here inside of that top 4. So all of these Aston Martins are now going to be prioritizing, how do we counter Chevrolet? How do we make sure Chevrolet does not get away from us? Because we've seen it time and time again, come rain or shine. When the Chevrolet gets out in front, it is not exactly easy to get back with it. See here down towards the back of the field, as I believe trouble hitting the court of Genaro Oliveira with some disconnect problems there in his Alpine. We're on board with Christian Lebay. We'll get on board though with the pole sitter of Jorge van Herle. So then, as we line up, 20 cars in all. It'll be 10 either side of it, or actually 10 on one side, 9 on the other, as we do have a pit lane start courtesy of Jordan Minards in the number 23. Regardless, 20 cars turning out for round 1 here of the HCCL GT4 Challenge. Here at what is technically Season 3, the High Caliber Community League. On our way then, down towards the line for the first time in this series, an all GT4 grid. Without further ado, 60 minutes against the clock here in the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. The Temple of Speed gives rise to round 1. Without further ado then, we are green and racing here in Monza. Already a fantastic start by the leading Aston Martin. You can see behind him as well, Svennington trying getting the leg up, but you can see ultimately the drag race being won at this time by Christian Lebay. On our way down towards turn 1, the Canadian will be to the outside. Can he sweep it across the nose of the Aston Martin of Jorge van Herle? Down towards turn 1, we can see there's contact behind between Vertzi and Wells. Oh my word, it's a huge pile-up. It's a monstrously large pile-up. Take a gander at that. Disaster strikes the court immediately on lap 1. That was the ultimate ricochet effect of the ages there. You can see coming out on top of it, though, was the likes of Christian Lebay. I don't believe what I'm seeing here. Jorge van Herle started this race from pole. He's now down to 7th, so not 17th, 13th, 12th. It's adjusting there. Give it a time. Oh my goodness, what on earth happened here at the Temple of Speed? He's 18th. Alongside then ahead of Stephen Sutton. Could potentially even lose the position out. That's disaster. And this is exactly what Majorana was waiting for, because now he's up in the top 5. So, very well played, intentional or otherwise. That is some chess and not checkers stuff from the 683 of Vito Salvatore Majorana. Did he perhaps know this was going to happen? Regardless then, after that opening scramble, I should say, it's Lebay from Ota, Wells, and Majorana, and Guillaume for the top 5. He's alongside Vertzi, though. So who comes out on top? Will it be Vertzi or Guillaume? It's Vertzi on his way to Ascari. Then right behind him is Tyler Vermack trying to get the leg up on MCR. Guillaume runs wide, though, out of turn 10. He's around the outside on the number 925. This is all for 6th place, and he looks to be up and ahead. Right on the tail of MCR Guillaume as well. If we try and catch on board with him here, the camera's not doing us much justice. You can see amongst the fray there, you can see the number 41 of Anthony Valorio now up an extra position here for the race start. What an opening lap. We were not disappointed by the disaster that could have been here at Monza. Unbelievable. I've never seen a crash of that grandeur. The number 77 in trouble, though. That's the yellow flags out at turn 11. Getting a gander here. 77, that's Jorge van Herle, so it's absolute bedlam for the pole sitter, who appears to be out of round 1 within 1 lap. See here, move down the inside for Matthew Copsey on Cam Walker. That was very neat and tidy by the Porsche. So looking up into that top 3, Tom Wells, having surfed the madness here in his 818 Ginetta, finds himself looking up the back end at the moment of 2nd place. That's Asahi Ota in 2nd place with Aston Martin. Leading that charge, though, somehow having threaded the eye of a needle for that incident, down at turn 1 and 2 is Christian Lebay in the 119 Chevrolet. Just as we have a moment here, let's get a look back at that replay on that opening lap incident. So there was a bump out for Vertzi, then he collides with Van Herle. Somehow, yes, there's a bit of a scrape for the 119, but he comes out practically unscathed. So there was a tap there between Wells and Vertzi. Vertzi hits Van Herle. Van Herle spins back into the rest of the field, holds everyone up. Asahi Ota has to cut over the opening chicane. What on earth was that starting incident? The bottom line, the number 77 appears to be out of this race. Jorge van Herle started from pole, and his chances of a race win today absolutely wiped out, totally annihilated. Now we're on board at the moment with Tom Wells with Ginetta. He makes third place, but he's losing ground to Asahi Ota, and more especially, he's losing ground to his lead against Vito Salvatore Majorana and Manuel Verzi. Those two are only 0.6 of a second from one another. There could be an imminent fight here for fourth position. You can see further back, though, there are still positions to be won and lost here. Tyler Vermaak runs super wide out of turn 11, and that's Elias Svennington's gain there, up to 6th. And same too for Anthony Velorio, who emerges ahead of the AMG on our way down the opening straight here. Only 5 minutes into today's session, and we have been given quite the mouthful for information. Right now, looking at a potential fight for 6th here for Elias Svennington as he's looking to fend off Velorio and Vermaak for that place. Up ahead, you can see Verzi v Majorana. Let's get on board here with the defending of 2. Vito Salvatore Majorana with Aston Martin has got his hands full here, fighting off 4th position from the likes of Manuel Verzi. 0.5 of a second right now between the Mercedes and the Aston Martin. Up ahead, you can see that things are starting to close down ever so slightly between Ota and Wells. Behind them, you can see that things are closing up between Svennington, Velorio and Vermaak. Guillaume actually getting into there. And you can see right on the back of that fight is Matthew Copsey. Lapped traffic up ahead. That's Carlos Diaz. You can see running out wide is Svennington. Oh my word, how did he keep that in the clear and narrow? Let's get a look at that on the replays. So this was, we were watching with Vito Salvatore Majorana there in the middle of your screens, the bright yellow number 683 in the background though. That black and gold number 3 of Elias Svennington. How on earth did he not end up collecting himself at the wall there? That was miraculous vehicle control by the Swede. He's only 0.2 of a second away, though, from Velorio, so we may have to catch on board with him in a moment's time. We're still watching in the fight for 4th place between Salvatore Majorana and Verzi. Oh, my word, it's trouble up ahead for Wells. He's trying to pass. That's, Carlos Diaz in trouble there. He was drifting across the track. That could be disaster in a moment's time. We quickly just catch here, the fight between Verzi and Majorana. This is now for 3rd place. How on earth did no one get collected there? Besides Wells. Oh, it's so close on the exit of turn 11. When will the madness end here at Monza? Unbelievable. Regardless, Majorana emerges on the podium then. So right now, that top 2 comprised of a lonesome pack of Christian Lebay and Asahi Ota, now making 3rd for Aston Martin, Vito Salvatore Majorana on a miraculous opening drive here. The cards seem well played in his favour, but down the inside goes Manuel Verzi. Jumps the first of the sausage curbs here at the Variante Rettifilo. Oh my goodness. And they're still alongside out through the Curva Grande. So no end in sight here for this fight of the podium. We're still on board with Vito Salvatore Majorana fighting on home turf here against his fellow countryman. Down towards Della Rogia. These two are not backing down whatsoever. This is full-fledged, both arms swinging, all cylinders firing warfare between Aston Martin and Mercedes. Now, though, Majorana has been backed up into Elias Svennington, his fellow Aston Martin, now gunning for the position he covets. 4th position is up for grabs here for a tide of cars on the back of Salvatore Majorana. Manuel Verzi then up to 3rd with Mercedes. What a turnaround for AMG today. Minus 40 kilos for the Astons, but plus 40 for the AMGs. And they've still managed to turn that into a podium so far. Miraculous. Down the curve of the Saraglio, now to the Variante Ascari. We can see that Svennington is closing in on Majorana here. Something is awry with the 683. On our way round turn 9, now turn 10. On the trails here of Svennington is Velorio and Vermaak that are not backing down at all themselves right now in that fight for 6th. You can see just how close it is, razor thin between these drivers right now. It's still on the topic of the fight of 4th. Salvatore Majorana still vulnerable to Elias Svennington. You see the number 3 backs out though. He's trying to get inside Vito's head now. Out through turn 11. We do have yellow flags. It's the 411 in trouble out of the Variante Ascari. And he's caught up there with quite a few other cars, among them the number 32 of Carlos Diaz. So if we quickly try to catch it, it was the 411 of Martin Mattei. So I believe I may be able to piece together what's gone on in regards to that incident. We're back in the green flag conditions for the time being. as we try to catch back on board now, actually with the attacking perspective here. So we've gone away from the perspective of Vito Salvatore Majorana. Now we're on board with Elias Svennington. You can see cutting the chicane there at the Variante Rettifilo was MCR Guillaume in 8th position. That's the second time he's had to do this. How many more times before the stewards have a word with him here and he gets a slap on the wrist? Bear in mind, we're only nearly 10 minutes into today's race, and it has been so incredibly dramatic that we cannot predict the next 10 minutes here at Monza. Right behind Svennington at the moment. He may have to start considering his options in a fight for potentially 5th position. Right now, still fundamentally looking at a fight for 4th against Vito Salvatore Majorana. He may have to reconsider his tune in a second here, as getting right up to his rear quarters is Anthony Villorio and Tyler Vermack in 6th and 7th. See, up the road from him here, trying to reel the gap back into Verzi is the bright yellow Aston in front, the 683 of Vito Salvatore Majorana. Right behind Svennington is the bright green McLaren of Anthony Villorio. Something I want to point out as well, that gap seemingly between the 119 and the 55 is closing down. Something is amiss for the leading Chevrolet, or it's been a case where Asahi Ota, now being given the clear open air, is really pushing the Aston to its upper limits. Let's see if we can catch on board what's going on with the front row. We can see that Carlos Diaz is now in the pits. And there is the physical gap. It's 0.9 of a second between Ota and Labey. Now, I want to bring back up the discussion from the data we were given heading into this championship of last season's results. These two comprised the most of the race wins. Ota winning in round 2 and round 7. Labey winning in rounds 3 through 6. Could we be seeing a duel for first place here? I sure hope so. We're watching with Asahi Ota as he's half a second away from the leading Chevrolet of Christian Labey. Something is awry with the 119. It led that timing chart by 2.5 seconds from the race start. Now that gap has dwindled to all but naught. Let's stay on board with Asahi Ota fighting for first. Just under a quarter of an hour into today's race and already a fight for the lead. Meanwhile, Reese Minards with a drive-through penalty. Cam Walker's in the pits as well, serving the first of their mandatory pit stops. The number 683 is in trouble, so that's Vito Salvatore Majorana. Let's see if we can catch on board with the state of affairs here for the 683. And that's off at Della Rosia. So could there have been perhaps an incident between himself and the Mercedes ahead of him of Verzi, or perhaps even the Aston behind him of Svennington? We may not know. On our way then down towards the Variante Ascari, Asahi Ota goes exceptionally wide there and manages to keep it in the clear and narrow. Doesn't spin out, but he has lost a lot of time to Christian Labey. So that chance of the first place fight has dwindled away here from the Japanese driver, but he has given it a very good go at keeping the car under control. In these conditions, that is miracles that you're seeing here being brought to life by Asahi Ota. We're back in the green flag conditions then for the time being after the incident down at Della Rosia. 683 of Salvatore Majorana back going. We'll cut away from Ota for the time being. See, here is the leading Chevrolet of Christian Labey. Now has been given breathing space here. Was only 0.4 of a second ahead of the Aston Martin of Asahi Ota. Now is about 2.1 after that incident at the Variante Ascari. Looking around the field again to see where our nearest fights are coming from. Sean Robinson's catching up to Flitzer Flop, who I must say has had a very strong race start here. He was starting at the back of the field after what appeared to be a disconnect. And now the German's inside the top 10 and ahead of Robinson. The twin American Mercedes cars, Robinson and Sutton, are not having the best of days here in Monza, and I think it still owes to the fact that we've got that 40-kilo ballast. You can see, though, for Sean Robinson, he's given it a very good go here for position. We'll stay on board with Robinson as he looks to potentially challenge for a top 10 down into the Variante Rettifilo. Very late on the brakes by the Mercedes, but keeps behind the McLaren for the time being. You can see there Tom Wells, who was briefly on the podium, but before that incident, after the Variante Ascari with the lapping Aston Martin of Carlos Diaz, or the lapped Aston Martin of Carlos Diaz, I should say, took him out of commission. So taking a look at that timing chart then after nearly a quarter of an hour of racing, Sean Robinson out to the inside at the Della Rosia chicane. Can he make it stick out of turn 4, now turn 5? Very tidy by the number 958. So having a look, nearly a quarter of an hour into today's race, Christian Lebay leads Asahi in second with the fastest time. Manuel Verzi in third and Elias Svennington in fourth. Tyler Vermack in the top five. Anthony Velorio in sixth. MCR Guillaume in seventh. Matthew Copsey in eighth. Tom Wells down to ninth. And Flitzerflop now down to 11th, as in 10th is Sean Robinson. Stephen Sutton in 12th. Vito Salvatore Majorana in 13th position. Kenaro Oliveiro in 14th, and Martin Matanay in 15th. Jordan and Reese Menard 16th and 17th. Cam Walker 18th. Carlos Diaz 19th, and Jorbe van Herle functionally a DNF. What a dramatic opening quarter hour we've seen here, and what a move we saw just now from Sean Robinson. You can see here, Stephen Sutton's looking to get a handful as well. Let's see what the Mercedes can do. Sutton on his way alongside, now fighting for 11th position on our way to turn 11, as a matter of fact, on the 979 of Flitzerflop. Commented earlier on what a start he's had to this race, having halved his position on the grid. He started at the back and is now just outside of the top 10 after that move by Robinson. Sutton couldn't manage to make it stick on the outside of Parabolica, but he's got a very, very healthy run here down the opening straight. Another yellow flag is out, this time down in Sector 3 that we've just left now for the 32 of Diaz. Back in the green flags from where we're standing, but that's still on the exit of turn 10, so an advisory out for the approaching 666. It's side by side between Sutton and Flop. Sutton comes out on top of it. Now up into actually what appears to be 10th place, so that's a mistake from our end. It was originally for 11th, but I believe they passed up a car that was in the pit lane. We can also see behind that Guillaume and Copsey are getting side by side down into Della Rosia. Now this is for 7th place. Guillaume defends. Copsey's on the attacking. Let's see if we can catch on board with either of these two here. Matthew Copsey is the point of view we take here, the attacking car of two. Right now, still vigorously fighting for 7th place against MCR Guillaume. But a bit of trouble there on the exit of Lesmo too. That seems to be something though reciprocated by the Mercedes up ahead. Both of them having a little bit of trouble getting fleet of foot on the exit of turn 7. Now as we exit the Curva del Seraglio on our way to the Variante Ascari, what can Copsey do here? Now he knows maneuverability wise he's got that Mercedes pitched. The Porsche is one of the punchier GT4s in the corners. So he's just able to tuck it in through every section here of the Variante Ascari. Now right onto the backside of the Mercedes number 925 of MCR Guillaume. What can the Brit do then? He's got the slipstream. Could he be looking for a move on the inside down at turn 11 as we head down to Parabolica? He doesn't think of it there, but he did position himself, trying to get inside Guillaume's head, trying to let him know, you keep leaving these gaps open, I'm going to take him on the exit of turn 11. Then he'll have another run down the opening straight. Meanwhile, all of this is benefiting Anthony Velorio, who is leaving them behind here. He's up 0.8 of a second up the field, and in that last lap was up, looking at it here, 0.7 on either of their lap times. Right now, it's the story of two, though, for 7th. Copsey versus Guillaume. Copsey to the outside, later on the brakes with Porsche, and manages to make an absolute blinder stick down into Retafilo. Very well done then by Matthew Copsey for 7th. We cut away then from Copsey for the time being. We'll catch up with him later on in today's race as we take a look around the field. So it was Tom Wells that we passed up in the pit lane. The 818 Ginetta, originally slated to start for Maserati, is having an absolute howler of an opening race here at the first round of the championship. And same too could definitely be said for Jorbe van Herle. There was really nothing he could have done in that situation to avoid what was coming. That was totally out of his control, and I think we see another driver that's not had the best of races now has definitely fallen down quite a ways from where he was. Vito Salvatore Majorana, who was briefly on the podium, and sadly just not the case this time around. He's fallen down quite a bit and had that incident out of Della Rosia, as a matter of fact, a few laps ago. So we see here with Svennington, 0.2 of a second from Manuel Verzi. We could be seeing a podium fight on our hands here. The Mercedes runs it wide through turn 8, then to turn 9. The Aston Martin's right on top of him here. Svennington could be looking for a blinder on the exit of the Variante Ascari. So they're side by side. It's a drag race. AMG versus Aston Martin, 4 litres versus 4 litres, and Aston Martin takes it. Svennington now up to third. What's the fight back by Manuel Verzi as he's to the outside? Will it be late apexing? He goes super late on the brakes. Can that possibly pay off for Manuel Verzi? A little twitch over the rear quarter of the car tells you otherwise, as that was a very solid fight between the pair of them, but seemingly going in the favour of Elias Svennington for third place here in race 1. Round 1 of the championship, and what an opening round we've seen here. And we're only 20 minutes in to a 60-minute race. Buckle your seatbelts, because this is going to be one hell of a ride here in HCCL. And what a pleasure it is for us to have been taken on board as your broadcasters for round 1 of the championship, as we see running over the Varianti Retafilo. Svennington very nearly having picked up a penalty there for his move, but he just couldn't get the brakes locked in time. The Aston Martin had to take the wider of the lines, or I suppose the shallower of the lines, technically. Let's see if we can catch on board with Manuel Verzi. We quickly see here what could be the fight for first in a moment's time. We'll be catching on board with Asahi Ota and Christian Lebay in a moment's time. We can see as well Stephen Sutton now out past Vito Salvatore Majorana. The Aston Martin in between the two Mercs. We want to try and get on board with Manuel Verzi. And here is the number 6 AMG. Was briefly on that podium, has just had that podium chance ripped away from him here on home soil by Elias Svennington with Aston Martin. What's the fight back then from Verzi? He gave it a very good go out through turn 11 last lap. As we approach that 20-minute mark, what can the Mercedes do? And I must say as well, I think we did maybe rain on Mercedes' parade, no pun intended, over the course of this round. Maybe we underestimated what the drivers for the Mercedes cars could do, because when push came to shove, the Mercedes cars are not actually doing too bad today. Right now, they comprise 2 of the top 5 positions, Verzi and Vermac. We do want to try and catch on board, though, in a moment's time with the leading pair, Lebay and Ota, as there looks to be the brewings of a fight for the lead of the race very shortly approaching here. They're only off each other by about 0.3 of a second. So we'll cut away briefly from Verzi v Svennington. We will be catching up with them at a moment's notice, because right now we're seeing the fight for the race lead kick off once again. We'll be watching with the attacking of 2 cars here. Asahi Ota fighting for the lead against Christian Lebay. Lebay will have to defend with every fibre of his being here. Aston Martin versus Chevrolet in a remarkable pairing here. 20 minutes into the race, we're back immediately into the fight of the lead. We can see, though, when we just cut away, the number 6 of Manuel Verzi has jumped to the pit lane and is now trying for a strategic cut on Svennington's Aston Martin. So that is a remarkable turn of fate in that fight. So probably a good time for us to have then cut away, as now we are on board with the leading fight of race. Well, round 1, I should say. Out through Lesmo 2 then, turn 7, down the Curva de Saraglio. You can see the difference in approach here into the Varianti Ascari, where Lebay gets a little bit more hesitant on the curbs. Ota has his Aston geared up in such a way that he can just full-blown assault those curbs with reckless abandon. Now, these two have got to be careful. They're coming up on lap traffic, number 23 of Jordan Minards and the number 818 of Tom Wells. Number 77, seemingly still in the pits, Jorby van Herle. So down the opening straight we go. It's a territory you would expect Chevrolet to have superior straight line speed, but thanks to that beneficial straight line slipstream being given to Asahi Ota's Aston Martin, he's able to stay with here in the wake of that monstrously fast Camaro. Lansing, Michigan versus Gaydon, Warwickshire then for machinery. Aston Martin Lagonda versus Chevrolet Pratt Miller Engineering. We do know as well, even up in GT3, it's the story that the Aston Martin is fundamentally one of the best cars to have for wet racing in ACC, and it seems that its titular little brother, the Vantage GT4, is no too different from the GT3 that we've come to know and love here on ACC. Asahi Ota has really got proper mastery of that machine. A big slide out by the Camaro of Christian Lebay. That was incredible car control by the Canadian, but it has cost him dearly because Asahi Ota is right on top of him now at the exit of turn 7. Now as we make our way to the Curva de Saraglio, who comes out on top then as things are closer than they've ever been before in round 1 of the championship. Asahi Ota swings it out to the right-hand side, but it's too far away to lodge side-by-side action with the Camaro. Not that he'd want to on his way into the Variante Ascari. Both of them now, as it seems to be a pressing matter that both of them are now into the case of tiptoeing round that corner. Is it a case here where the rain is actually picked up? It certainly does look that way from the start of today's race to where we are right now, about 25 minutes in, that the rain has picked up a ways, and we could even be looking at standing water collecting on the track itself. You can see it's off the track right now, which is what's led to incidents over the course of today's race, is that just definite lack of grip in any quantity on the far edges of the track. You can even see there on the exit of turn 11 at Parabolica to the far left-hand side is pooling water. So we are perhaps seeing here proper downpour taking its final toll here on the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, and it is affecting these two's ability to fight for the lead. Lebay won't be complaining too much because he's got the power play position. He's up front, he's in charge of the pace of this field here, and he can defend for his life from the approaching Aston Martin. Asahi Ota's got the harder of the two challenges here. On paper, at least. Now, this isn't factoring just how wily that Chevrolet can be in the wet. We've seen it as well over in Alton Park not long ago, that the Chevrolet is definitely quite the handful in the wet, but Lebay's making light work of it. He knows that machine like the back of his hand, and it seems to be very clear so the case for Asahi Ota with his Aston Martin. These are two drivers at the apex of their ability here, the ace of their game, going toe-to-toe, and what a sight for the eyes it is. So we'll quickly catch up with these two in a moment's time here as we take a look. From Lebay's point of view, you can see over his rear view just how close Ota is to him now. That 55 isn't going anywhere. It's clinging to him like a bad habit down into the Variante Ascari. 34 minutes to go. That Chevrolet has definitely got quite the challenge now. He's already usurped the lead of this race after the chaos of lap 1 down at turns 1 and 2. But now comes the task in the next 33 minutes of keeping that mantle. We'll catch up with these two in a moment's time. We can see MCR Guillaume and Anthony Valorio getting into arms here for 6th place. Mercedes versus McLaren, 0.3 of a second on their way to the Curva de Saraglio, a ways away from the nearest fight to them. We actually see trouble here for Reese Minard's damage for the 666 Mercedes as he reels into the pit lane. See Stephen Sutton and Sean Robinson look to be getting into a fight in a moment's time for 9th. We'll quickly catch on board here with the state of affairs. It is as closer as it's ever been. Now, we saw this down at the Curva de Saraglio, and where he didn't have the opportunity then, Asahi Ota may have the chance now. Down into turn 1 we go. The Aston Martin alongside the Chevrolet, but it's going to be to the far side of it. Down into turn 1. Can't make it stick for the inside, but is going for the more aggressive of two to give himself a better exit by the time we hit the Curva Grande. Now, can he lodge an attack down the inside at the Curva... not the Curva Grande, sorry, at the Variante della Roggia? It sure does look to be the case. He's running high out of the Curva Grande, but he's trimmed a little bit of time off there on the Aston Martin. That Chevrolet is just able to hammer down and keep position right now down into della Roggia. You can see sliding out of that as well. So it is not an easy trip here, even though he's got the easier of two tasks. Lebay is also having to wrestle not only with position against Asahi Ota, but he's also having to wrestle his own machine. As you can see, a big slide out of turn 6, where there seems to be no real loss of composure in this fight for first for Asahi Ota. And another slide out of turn 7. Could this solidify a move up to the lead of the race? Asahi Ota could be moments away from taking the lead of round 1 here in Monza. They're side by side out of the curve to Saraglio on our way to Ascari. Up and ahead around the outside. So it seems for Asahi Ota, this could be it. Down into turn 9. It's side by side between Chevrolet and Aston Martin. But out up into the lead of the race is Asahi Ota as we exit Ascari. Brilliant move then by the Japanese talent. But it's not over yet because Christian Lepay is in hot pursuit of that Aston Martin down to turn 11. Make no mistake of it, we are not out of the woods just yet. Ota may be ahead, but Lepay is right behind him, and that Chevrolet is all over the road in its attempts to find a way to the inside. Ota runs wide out of Parabolica. Now we're on board with Christian Lepay as he takes to the helm of fighting once more for the race lead. And this is where it's going to massively swing for Chevrolet. They know straight line speed is the benefit they have over Aston Martin. And trying to cut the slipstream off Asahi Ota goes from right to left. Holds his position for now. Lepay's just too far away to lodge an attack down into turn 1. Later on the brakes very nearly makes contact with the Aston Martin now leading the charge. So 30 minutes and 3 different race leaders. Leading us down into turn 1 for the first time was Jorge van Herle, then Christian Lepay, and now leading the race is Asahi Ota and the number 55 Aston Martin. We'll catch up with these two in a moment's time. We take a look back here. Now for what is the fight of 4th as drivers around them have come into the pit lane. This is Anthony Valorio versus MCR Guillaume. Mercedes and McLaren in arms from what was originally 6th is now 4th. Looking at where the grid stands here with pit lanes aloof. We can see that Copsy's into the pit lane. So is Sutton. We can see plenty of drivers have already come into the pits and taken their pit stops. Among them, Vertzi, Svennington, Walker, Flop, Wells, Robinson, Minards, Olivero, Matinee, other Minards as well, Reese Minards, and Diaz. Currently in the pits at the moment, then Matthew Copsey and Stephen Sutton at the halfway mark. It's Asahi Ota leading round 1 here ahead of Christian Lepay, who has now dropped half a second away from the number 55. Tyler Vermack now in 3rd, but yet to have taken a pit stop and swerving all over the road there on the exit of Lesmo 1. Anthony Valorio has got his hands full here fighting for what is currently 4th, and as we see very nearly a spin into the wall by the Mercedes right on his rear quarter here. MCR Guillaume in the top 5. We are in no shortage for fantastic racing opportunities here. We can actually see a 3-car battle, Flop v Walker v Wells. Walker leading the charge with BMW. Then Flitzer Flop in the number 979. And right on our screens at the moment, the 818 of Tom Wells, who won the opening round of last season, if memory serves correctly. And running out wide there, that's Sean Robinson and a 958. Surely he doesn't find his way to gain position there. No, drops behind them massively in his efforts to avoid a drive-through penalty. We can see the leading pair are in. So Asahi Ota into his pit box. Lepay just making his way down to the pit box for the 119. Vermack is still out on track at the moment. What is the going rates here for the fight of 4th as it hits an all-time high? Valorio versus Guillaume. Who pulls the trigger and who comes into the pits? It looks to be Valorio. So Guillaume stays out, is up into 4th. Will effectively be up into 2nd then, as now leading the race is Tyler Vermack. So that marks now 4 different race leaders. So you see here all manner of thing kicking off. Let's see if we can try and catch on board with the driver leading that charge, or if we can, even at the better, try and find the driver in the middle of the charge. We see now Cam Walker has dropped behind Flitzer Flop and Tom Wells. Let's see if we can catch on board with the leading car of that fight now, which would be Flitzer Flop number 979. Of course, the menu navigation is never really that well done here on ACC, but it is side by side very nearly between Ginetta and McLaren. We're on board then with the leading McLaren of this fight for 9th position as it stands right now. Flitzer Flop fighting for 9th. And he has a whole swarm of cars at his rear quarter there. Tom Wells in the 818, the purple and orange Ginetta. Only 0.7 of a second away from him. Then the bright sort of palish pastel pink number 24 BMW that's gone super wide. That was Cam Walker. So that's a free position for Sean Robinson and the almost orange, yellowy orange there, Mercedes. A drive-through penalty for Anthony Valorio. So that's disastrous for the fellow McLaren on the grid here. The number 41 exits his pit lane run and has a drive-through penalty to serve. We'll catch up with Flop in a moment's time as we take a look around the field to see where the other of our two pit lane runners most recently has emerged. Matthew Copsey emerges 2.5 seconds behind Elias Svennington. Manuel Vertzi nearly 15 seconds up the field from the pair of them. The story of two then. Two Mercedes cars lead the charge, and our fourth new race leader, Tyler Vermaak, is he weighing up his chances here to come into the pit lane in a moment's time? He makes his way out of the curve of Parabolica. What is the going rate then for the South African? On his way out of turn 11, is he eyeing up the pit lane? No, he is not. Very close, as a matter of fact, to hitting that bollard. What is the going rates for MCR Guillaume then? Does he choose to go into the pits? Yes. So Vermaak remains out alone as the final driver on this grid, yet to have taken their pit stop as MCR Guillaume solidifies that penultimate decision. Slows all the way down, actually to a dead stop there, I believe, from the number 925. So that is very bizarre. Sahi Ota then will be up to second place with the fastest lap. Christian Lebay has dropped behind massively after that pit stop. He's 7.1 seconds from the 55. So where it stands right now by strategic standpoint, Asahi Ota could go back into the leading position of today's race. Tyler Vermaak is only 2 corners up out of Retafilo and Curva Grande, now out through Della Rosia. We do have a yellow flag, just to advise at the moment there on, that was for turn 11. That was for the number 3 car. Elias Svennington in serious trouble. Out of Parabolica, has been towed to the pit lane. Is that the end of the line for Svennington in today's race? Could that be the straw that breaks the camel's back? We'll wait here for word on what's going on for Elias Svennington, but that looks to be the end of the road on what has been an otherwise fantastic opening round. Has all come asunder for the Swede out of turn 11. That looks to be the end of the road, sadly, for him. Getting back on with the story of the other Aston Martins on this field then, as we're back into green flag conditions. Asahi Ota is on the charge to the provisional lead of this race. Tyler Vermaak, still having yet taken his pit stop, finds himself stranded out alone here. 25 minutes left to go in today's session. I've just realised as well, there is a monstrously large thunderstorm going on outside. So if our broadcast, for whatever reason, does go out, that would more likely than not be a power cut. Besides the point, Vermaak leads the charge and still tempts fate here with another long run to the pits. Now, he's almost renowned for this capacity to run the car out long, and these strategies often go up to a bit of a coin toss. Keen-eyed viewers will remember how much of a coin toss that came out to be at the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship, which you'll be catching us from this evening in the Nürburgring GP circuit. A few rounds ago at Misano, it was that same daring strategy that ultimately lost him his opportunity to fight for a race win. That ultimately went to the Nissan of Anton Pol. So this real flip-flop strategy from Vermaak. Now, it is not sporadic, it is not arbitrary. He has measured this out. I've spoken with Vermaak on several occasions. He knows what he's doing when it comes to these, but it always keeps us on our toes, and I think that's the idea. It's a shock and awe tactic by going this late. I don't think it's a case where he's prolonging the inevitable here. He's got a considerable gap on Asahi Ota, and he could definitely re-emerge up and ahead of Manuel Vertzi, the other Mercedes inside that top 5 at the moment. So it really does beg the question, what can Vermaak do in regards to that pit lane? Jesus. Oh, my word. Okay, just excuse me one moment. Something is thrashing the window here in my room. There's a lot of wind whiplash there, seemingly. Oh, my sincerest apologies there. That doesn't normally happen here on TRTM, but that actually did frighten me quite a bit there. Quite a big thunderstorm coming my way at the time of recording, so my apologies. So where things stand here as we approach the final 20 minutes of racing, Tyler Vermaak still leads the charge, but is yet to have taken his pit stop, so he finds himself liable to lose up to 4 positions if he serves that pit stop perfectly and down to the T. Bear in mind, tyres and fuel means a minimum 20 seconds in the pit box alone. That's not factoring for the run in and out of this relatively shorter pit lane. Now, that's one of the best things about Monza from a strategic standpoint. Much easier to plan for. If you were to run a race at Spa, different story entirely. Now you've got to factor in almost an extra 2 minutes on top of your pit stop time just to get in and out. So currently in the pit lane, Svennington and Van Herle, that seem to be the two DNFs of today's race, and that has got to be a bit of a bittersweet feeling for either of these two drivers. They had an incredibly strong quali, but it's all come apart at the seams for the Aston Martin pair from K1 Esports. The number 55 of Asahi Ota, he's riding on cloud 9 here. He is not having any kind of trouble now that he's got out and ahead of Christian Lebay's Chevrolet. He's 6.6 seconds up the road from the Chevy, and with no sign of slowing down, he's on the dominant charge back to the race lead and looking to take home a resounding victory here in the opening round of the championship. Bear in mind, 21.5 minutes left to go, so never say never. Stranger things have happened and can still happen in today's race. We've just missed out on a move there between MCR Guillaume and Cam Walker. Walker now... Actually, no, as a matter of fact, is still up and ahead. So let's see if we can catch on board with these two as things look to be kicking off in a moment's time here. Here's Cam Walker in the number 24 BMW, who looks to fend off Steven Sutton in the number 7 and MCR Guillaume in the number 925. Sutton goes a little bit short through turn 11. Right now, though, Walker holding off 9th. The Mercedes has got a much better run out of turn 11. MCR Guillaume is looking for position here on Cam Walker. This is a very, very stifled fight for BMW. They're caught out in the headlights of the Mercedes. Down towards turn 1. Is MCR Guillaume going to tempt fate here with a suggestion of up the inside? Absolutely. And he may have just overcooked his brakes because there he goes onto the emergency slip road here at the Variante Rettifilo. Cam Walker will be given that position back then on the exit of turn 2, then to turn 3. Back up in a 9th position. That was a little bit of a hair raiser then between himself and Guillaume. Checking for news then on the 835. Does Tyler Vermack come into the pits on this lap? Does not appear to be the case. He stays out for yet another lap here. Down to De La Rosa. Now not thinking about it this time, but the driver who is thinking of getting very late on the brakes to put himself back into equal stead of this fight is Steven Sutton, just outside of that top 10. So there are vital points positions up for grabs here for all three of these drivers for the start of the championship and for the long road ahead. But who comes out on top in the fight of 9th? Down into Lesmo 2. Cam Walker has got a very solid position on track here, but a very poor exit of Lesmo 2 means that at the Curva de Saraglio, it could be side by side between himself and MCR Guillaume's Mercedes. Bear in mind, Steven Sutton is right with him as well, making it three's company here for the fight of 9th, but up to the inside at the moment is Cam Walker. Around the outside will be MCR Guillaume. So who yields first then? Will it be Walker? Will it be Guillaume? Walker's still to the inside. Guillaume tried for around the outside. Walker's back up into 9th. Fantastic display of defense, I should say, there by Cam Walker. We can see as well surfing the trails of a bad exit by MCR Guillaume is Steven Sutton, who's now himself up to 10th position. War amongst the Mercedes here at the back of the top 10. Down towards turn 11 we go then. Cam Walker's just got to keep his head low and out of trouble here because the Mercedes cars are adamant to trip over one another instead of the 10th place. Could this be it, though? It was a very, very solid exit by Steven Sutton. Cam Walker picked up a lot of trailing water on the left-hand side out of turn 11. He's not had the best of exits there. The BMW is a little bit anemic in a straight line up against the Mercedes cars. He may just have enough in the pocket here to keep the Mercedes at bay, but Steven Sutton is looking very ambitious. Down towards turn 1 we go. Holds the racing line. Cam Walker holds centre mass of the road to try and defend from the two Mercs at his rear quarters on our way out of Rettifilo. Out through the Curva Grande. Let's get a look over the rear spoiler just to give you a scope of how close Sutton and Guillaume are to Walker. One of the closest battles on track at the moment, and what an exciting display we see here from BMW and Mercedes alike. 18 minutes left to go in today's race. What an opening round we've been given the treat of, and what a, well, for lack of a better word, disaster we had on that opening lap. That was pretty textbook Monza mayhem. Up the inside, though, on the exit of Lesmo 1 goes Stephen Sutton on Cam Walker. Could MCR Guillaume surf the trails here down into Lesmo 2? No. Tucks back in behind the BMW, but a better of two exits. A bit of a nudge on the 24. Puts MCR Guillaume back to the rear quarters there. Gives him the lights. He's not happy whatsoever with the American in the 24. The only BMW in this championship. Sutton's up to 9th. Cam Walker now fundamentally looking at a defensive fight for 10th. Down into Ascari we go. Guillaume is getting increasingly more and more frustrated at the BMW right in front of him, holding him up out through turns 9 and 10. Better exit, though, from the Mercedes. Puts them potentially side by side. We could barely see it on the cameras, but yes, side by side. Now watching from the interior view of Cam Walker. There's MCR Guillaume just up and ahead. Walker backs off. So that's all come to a close there on the fight for Cam Walker. He put on a very good fight here. May not be over, though, because very, very deep into the Variante Parabolica. Not the Variante Parabolica, the Curva Parabolica. I don't speak Italian. The Curva Parabolica was trouble for MCR Guillaume. Cam Walker now has Slipstream. May not be over yet. Never say never on the front of this fight. Still active for 10th place. Down towards turn 1 and 2, though. Aretafilo, that seems all but solidified now for MCR Guillaume. He's not riding in the trails of any other drivers for the time being, and now he's got even just a sniff of clean open air that Mercedes is able to perform to standards. So that seems to be the end of the story right now for Cam Walker. Down 2 positions from 9th to 11th. See here, Tom Wells has been on a remarkable comeback drive. After the incident he found himself in, trying to get around the lapped car of Carlos Diaz. He's done remarkably well, and sadly our graphics don't reflect the real car that he's in. It was a very last-second decision that took him away from what was going to be the paddock of Maserati. Now, I'm no expert, but that doesn't really look like a Maserati to you, does it? No, as a matter of fact, he's chosen Ginetta for this round, the G55 GT4. Remarkable little motor, 3.7-litre Ford Cyclone V6 engine packed somewhere into that incredibly tight fiberglass body. And see, Asahi Ota is still yet to have retaken the lead of this race, so Tyler Vermaak is really, really going along with this here. I've never seen him push things all the way to the limit here. You see here with Christian Lebay. Right now in 3rd. It will be provisionally 2nd after that pit lane run by Vermaak. Manuel Verzi could be up to the podium then. We'll see whether or not Vermaak's run has put him in close enough stead to be between the 119 and the 6 in the next 15 minutes here, but we're really left with our jaws agog. Now, we thought this was going to be another textbook late entry for Vermaak, but this is the latest I think we've ever seen it in our time covering this one specific driver. He's a familiar face here on TRTN, competes in a variety of different championships, is as well travelled as drivers like Lebay and like Villorio. And we also see quite a few names that were on this list that sadly couldn't make it to this round. So if ever we do get picked up for more rounds of the HCCL GT4 Challenge, which here's hoping, because it's been a fantastic opportunity to come along and cover what has been an ecstatic opening round here in Monza, then we'll be able to pick up on that. Looking around the field, Manuel Verzi, the understated story of the day, went side by side at one point with fellow Italian Vito Salvatore Majorana, and now is the leading Italian of this race, up in 4th, what is going to be 3rd position with any hopes here. He has had a very solid run in spite of that not so beneficial balance of performance. Verzi has really played against the odds here, and that does definitely put him in the discussions in my books for driver of the day, as it is a real story of grit. And I must say there are plenty of drivers that qualify for that same position. We see trouble at the moment has befell Anthony Villorio, as he's now down to 14th in this race. One other driver that I think would be definitely in the mentions here for driver of the day is Flitzer Flop. He started in 20th after a disconnect, and the number 979 now stands just a moment away then from a top 5. The 835 is in, so Asahi Ota now does lead this race. The real question is if we catch on board with Tyler Vermaak. That's Elias Svennington. You can see Vermaak just ahead of him in the paddock. There's Tyler Vermaak. So he now drops to 5th. Does Flop get ahead of him? Now, could it be just a little too far back for the 979? No, as you can see on the maps there, the 979 just rounds turn 11. The 835 is off of the jacks. Here comes Tyler Vermaak to the line, so he will drop behind Flitzer Flop. So that has definitely gone quite nicely in the favour of the German there. The number 979 is now in the top 5. So that I definitely would say you're looking at a story of either Vertzi or flop for the driver of the day mention here in round 1. Part of me is leaning in that direction of it being flop just based off the fact that he started at the back of this field after a disconnect and is now in the top 5. I think that stands, no matter what's happened in front of him, he's not just gotten there by accident. He has shown consistent pace here, great battling etiquette. He's been side by side with the best of them. And right now stands in that top 5. Maybe don't call that too early. Cuts over De La Rosia, but doesn't pick up a penalty right now. Commentator's curse is a very, very real thing. Do feel free to research it at home, but that could have ended pretty nastily there for Flitzer Flop. Let's have a look at where things stand then with just under 12 minutes left to go in today's race. Asahi Ota leads the charge by 7.9 seconds, rising on that from Christian Lebay, who is now down to second. Technically, this is a net neutral position for him. He started the race in second behind Jorbe van Hurle. Now is currently still in second place, this time beside Asahi Ota. In third then, Manuel Vertzi on a proper rise to form. The Italian marks the last of those podium positions for the time being. Matthew Copsey from the United Kingdom makes 4th in the number 67 Porsche 718. And then rounding out the top 5, Flitzer Flop, definitely within a mention of driver of the day today. German in the number 979 marks the last of those top 5 positions. So having a look elsewhere, we have Tom Wells in 6th and Sean Robinson in 7th. Tyler Vermack in 8th. Who's behind them at the moment. And we can see that trying to unlap himself, actually, when we saw there from Sean Robinson's point of view, is Anthony Villorio. And oh my goodness gracious me, that could have ended up as a very, very nasty incident. We've already seen incidents today regarding lapping and unlapping cars. That was millimeters. That is just millimeters there between them. We have just seen as well news from Jordan Minards. There was a disconnect there from the number 23. He's now at the back of the field and stuck in the pit lane for the time being. That's not gone well for him there. So on the discussion of the rest of the grid, after that pit lane run, we thought it was only a projection of about 4 positions lost. It's been actually double that for Tyler Vermack. He is now in 8th position after his pit lane run and sandwiched in between Robinson and fellow Mercedes here on screen, Stephen Sutton. And the number 7, who's down in 9th. MCR Guillaume rounds out the top 10. So it's actually been a real flip on their head here. Aston Martin comprised the majority of those leading positions in qualifying. They are now towards the back. Mercedes were towards the back. They are now towards the front. The whole dynamic, so it seems, bar a few occasions here, has flipped on its head between the two brands. So out past 10th place, we have the leading of 2 Alpines, Martin Matinee in the 411. He's in 11th position ahead of Cam Walker. Reece Minards in 13th, Anthony Villorio in 14th, and Gennaro Oliveira in 15th position. The last of our running cars then, Carlos Diaz, who found himself into quite a spot of bother earlier on in today's race when he was caught up, whether or not he was not being able to get out of the way or slipping out of the way and then into the path of Tom Wells, whilst the Ginetta was on the podium. Can see that Tyler Vermack is gunning for 7th position. Will stay on board here with the 835 as he's catching up to Sean Robinson with quite a brisk spring in his step here after that pit lane run. Nine minutes left to go then. It's all or nothing for these drivers now. No more pit stops needed. No more strategy required. This is going to be visceral white knuckle racing here, but both of them follow each other's line to run out incredibly wide, almost a V line there on the exit of the Curva Parabolica. So down the opening straight, it's Mercedes versus Mercedes. On that last lap, Vermack was nearly 4 seconds faster. 5.2 seconds actually was the precise metric in that last lap alone. That still, it still accurately describes what we're seeing here. Vermack is catching up to Robinson. Robinson runs it over the Variante Rettifilo, over the escape road. Vermack's not going to be happy with that. Not that I think it's going to matter too much as he's reeling in that number 958, I should say here, of the Mercedes in front of him. right to the tail end of Sean Robinson. Is Robinson going to put up much of a fight here for position? Vermaak does position himself to the inside, trying to force defensive posture out of Robinson. Not that it matters, because he's now run a second chicane in the same lap here. Surely a drive-through penalty is going to be on the way for Sean Robinson if he keeps this up. Down towards Lesmo 1 we go then. Definite loss of grip for the number 958. It's a real night and day difference you're seeing here between the two Mercs. Vermaak on fresh, wet tyres versus older wet tyres for Robinson. Out through Lesmo 2. Now to the curve to Saraglio. Vermaak up to 7th. Robinson down to 8th. Catch up with these two in a moment's time. Taking a look around, here's another one of the Mercedes cars. Manuel Vertzi in 3rd at the moment. He's going to be ecstatic with where he is on track. Finding his way to a podium here, surfing the chaos of that first couple of laps to be where he is right now. And it's been solid consistency from the Italian all race long to put himself where he is. He's been side by side with plenty of his compatriots here on the grid. Oh my word, let's not call this too early again. Taking the escape road. That seems to be a real pressing issue. Now, I don't know if it's a more so tyre degradation, as it's definitely slowed down a bit for the wet tyres. They can definitely go the extra mile in conditions like these over the dry tyres in dry condition. Or if it's a case where, as mentioned before, we did discuss this, and I'm starting to see it more and more as I take a look to either side of the track here, that collection of water. The rain is getting worse and worse and worse. Stopping distances are only going to be getting longer and longer and longer. It's why our battles have started to stagnate as much as they have compared to where they were at the start of this race. It has now become a fight more so for survival than it has for position. We can see Gennaro Oliveira has to cut the entirety of the Variante Ascari in his number 12 Alpine. So just trying to look around here to see where our nearest fights are coming from, and we're a little bit starved for choice because as the rain continues to batter down here on the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, we are without many choices. The drivers are starting to slip away from one another here as they focus more so on keeping the car on track than keeping it alongside one another. Such is the case though for Monza, is that, and in that sort of final quarter of the race, no matter the conditions, rain or shine, night or day, it becomes a fight for survival here. Monza, as we've seen already, can take and give whatever it wants to any one driver. It is an indiscriminately wrathful track here, and many must be sacrificed at its altar every time we visit. See here with Vermaak now up into 7th on his way around the Variante Ascari. You can see he's definitely a lot more fleet of foot when he came out of the pits now, because he's able to properly attack those curbs. We've seen with Mercedes cars how hesitant they've had to be over the course of this race. We've seen it out of mostly Vermaak and Asahi Ota, who now leads this race, that they're able to properly tackle the curbs on the right setup here. So they've really got those cars dialed in. Had it been a better qualifying day for Vermaak, I imagine he could have been fighting for a podium today. Sadly, he'll have to go without, as he's right now in 7th. With 4 minutes left to go, the chances of him jumping 4 positions in the next 4 minutes are highly unlikely. We can see, though, that a podium for Mercedes is doable. Manuel Vertzi currently 3rd in the number 6. So getting a look here in the last 4.5 minutes of racing to see where things stand here before the final home stretch run to the checkered flag to bring us to the end of round 1 of the championship. Asahi Ota leads from Christian Lebay, Manuel Vertzi in 3rd and Matthew Copsey in 4th. Blitzer Flop in 5th with Tom Wells in 6th, Tyler Vermaak in 7th. Actually catching up to that Ginetta, so there will be that discussion perhaps for the fight of the top 6 in a moment's time. More on that in a second. Sean Robinson in 8th and Stephen Sutton in 9th, as we see cutting the Retafilo chicane is MCR Guillaume in the number 925 Mercedes. Cam Walker in 11th position ahead of Martin Matilde and Anthony Valorio. Gennaro Oliveira in 14th and Carlos Diaz in 15th. Reese Minards in 16th and Jordan Minards in 17th. So fair play to the Minard twins here, as they have both decided to get back out on track in spite of the losses they've suffered over the course of today's race. They are adamant to see the checkered flag, and they're going to see the checkered flag together. So having a look around the track here, we can see things are a little bit bunched up in that fight for 3rd from Matthew Copsey, as Manuel Vertzi got caught up by traffic about a moment ago there. Cam Walker among them in the 24. That Porsche has caught all the way back up to third place. So there is the likely discussion then of another fight for the podium. Can Manuel Verzi fend off the likes of Matthew Copsey? He laid on the brakes there to get past the lapped BMW of Cam Walker, who himself had a fair share of fights today in the last couple of minutes. Here we go then for the fight of third. Copsey v Verzi. Mercedes versus Porsche. It's the one we've all been waiting for then, besides the race lead fight that we saw a couple, sort of dozen or so minutes ago between Asahi Ota and Christian Lebay. That was a real hair-raiser. Could we be seeing history repeat itself now for the last of those podium positions between Verzi and Copsey? We're only a moment away from it. We'll stay on board here with Matthew Copsey as we make our way out of Della Rosia. Also to discuss as well, there is that fight for Vermac for 6th place, so we will be keeping an eye on that. Right now, we'll stay on board with Matthew Copsey as he fights for the last of those podium positions. This could be all the way to the line. The trajectory we're on at the moment could see both of these drivers take this all the way to the checkered flag. And who is it that will come out on top? Let's find out. The closest they've ever been now, Copsey from Verzi out of the Curva de Seraglio. Porsche knows it doesn't have the best of straight line speed over the Mercedes, but he's got the slipstream, so that's all that matters. Riding in the rooster tails then of that Mercedes down into the Variante Ascari. You can see he's got so much more poke into the corners, but with that aero wash over the nose, it is exceptionally hard to keep the car in the clear and narrow, but Copsey is giving it absolutely 110%. We're on the final lap now, so Asahi Ota is but moments away from being crowned the race winner here in round 1 in the number 55 Aston, but we're watching what goes on then for the last of those podium positions. Will it be Verzi? Will it be Copsey? Who knows? Only time will tell us. Out of turn 11 then, and onto that final lap. It's all or nothing now between Porsche and Mercedes. Meanwhile, we'll quickly just check in on what the state of affairs is. And right now... Oh, it's contact just as we've caught for Mac and Wales. It's contact the moment we get to that fight for 6th. Oh, my word. Where he goes, trouble follows. And right now, back onto the fight for 3rd as it too hits its flashpoint. Both drivers over the emergency exit at turn 1. I don't believe what I'm seeing. As we began with chaos, so too we shall end with it. And I believe the 818's been let back out in front by Tyler Vermac. So Tom Wells is back up ahead of Vermac. But have both of them dropped position? One does wonder. We're trying to keep an eye as well for the number 55 as we'll be going on board with Asahi Ota before the checkered flag here in Monza. But that fight for 3rd is still roaring on. And with a slide on the exit of Della Rosia, it puts Copsey side by side with Manuel Verzi on his way to Lesmo 1 at turn 6. Can he hold it around the outside? Squeezed for position there. Off in the background goes Cam Walker. So we'll have to catch up with these two in a moment's time. As but a moment away here, we'll get on board with Asahi Ota as he makes his way to the Curva Parabolica. It has been an exceptionally strong race today. He's gone up against juggernauts of this class, and he himself has cemented himself as part of the history books then. He won twice last season, and he picks up his first here in round 1 of the championship. Asahi Ota wins in Monza. What a drive then by the Japanese talent, the 55, victorious for Aston Martin. But let's get on board with the final chapter of the fight for 3rd as Christian Lebay crosses the line for 2nd place here in Monza. Let's see, how does it pan out between Verzi and Copsey? Mercedes versus Porsche down to turn 11. It's all the way to the wire, around the outside, trying for a later apex. Manuel Verzi is fending off Matthew Copsey. A slide to the inside for the Porsche. It's all the way to the line here, but just by a hair's width for 3rd place. Manuel Verzi takes a podium at home. Brilliant, brilliant stuff all the way to the checkered flag. Taking a top 5 then in a moment's time will be Flitzer Flop for driver of the day. Started 20th, up 15 positions from race start for a top 5 finish. That is a real result to write home about for him today. That was proper down but never out mentality. What a drive we've seen on all quarters of it, though. What an opening round as well. To the line, then, comes Flitzer Flop for the top 5. Sean Robinson on his way to the line, then, will take home 6th with Mercedes on a solid result. Then a great turnaround from where things were in qualifying. Tom Wells on his way to the line finishes ahead of Tyler Vermac, the two having resolved their quarrel earlier on in today's race. Vermack in 8th, Steven Sutton to the line in 9th, MCR Guillaume in the top 10, so it seems there. Will come home in 10th in the number 925 Mercedes. Further down the line, we can see as well, Cam Walker in 11th position, Martin Matinee in 12th, Anthony Valorio 13th, Gennaro Oliveiro 14th, Carlos Diaz 15th, and the Minards, Reese in 16th, Jordan in 17th. 3 DNFs then. All 3 were Aston Martins. Elias Svennington, Vito Salvatore Majorana, and Jorbe van Hurler. It has been disaster for the majority of the Astons, but it is still a Vantage that takes the top step. What a result we've just seen then. I think the game's probably going to crash in a moment's time. Oh, no, as a matter of fact, fantastic. That's very rare that we don't crash the game when we go on to the replays like that. Asahi Ota then, your race winner for round 1. That's his 3rd career win in 2 seasons in GT4 here in HCCL. Very, very well done. He has fought diligently for that one. A 9.2 second gap to LeBay. It just wasn't the day today for Chevy. Manuel Verzi with a podium at home. He will not be arguing with that one. Copsey all the way to the line as well. What a drive between those two to give us a fantastic final battle. Blitzer flop top 5. Sean Robinson in the top 10, 6th, ahead of Wells and Vermack. What a drive we have seen today. A real pleasure then from us here on TRTN. And don't go anywhere, as a matter of fact. If you're thinking of tuning away from the channel, you'll have to give us, looking at it here, it's about 4 o'clock here in the United Kingdom. We'll be live in another 3 hours for the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship. Will be coming to you live from the Nürburgring GP circuit. That's going to be a fantastic one in a double header of events across the SME and the Sunday League tomorrow at 6:30. So what a pleasure it has been to be invited along to work with the folks on HCCL for their opening round of the GT4 Challenge. And what a gift we have been given here in this beautifully chaotic race. Can barely get the words out. Good Lord. But that is a real pleasure from us here on TRTN. Very well done then to Asahi Ota. Very well done to our podium sitters as well, Christian LeBay and Manuel Verzi. And a very well done to everyone who showed out for round 1 of the championship to make it one of the best races we've ever covered here on TRTN. Delightfully chaotic, brilliant, classic Monza madness. That's all from us, though, here on TRTN. We do apologise profusely for a little bit of the shakier production quality. This was quite a sort of last-second arrangement, but it has been such a pleasure to work with HCCL, and we're hoping for a future of more collaboration with the folks at the High Caliber Community League, as this has been a round to remember. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and take care. Good night.